When thinking of a good citizen, people like Nelson Mandela and Winston Churchill come to mind, but rarely ever do women come to mind. The changes that women had on this earth are hidden in time, and it's up to us to give these women the credit they deserve. One of these hidden gems was Susan B. Anthony, who was born on February 5th, 1820 in Massachusetts. She was raised by the Quaker family, who were strong in their opinions involving social justice and education. Later, she became a teacher in New York and noticed that women were earning an income of $250 a week, while men had an income of $10 a week.
But what is this? This is unbelievable. Why am I doing so much and getting paid so little? I will not stand for this. I must do something, anything to stop this nonsense. I shall protest until my voice says no more. I do not demand equal pay for any women. Save those who do equal work and value, for I believe that this is right and nothing less.
At 16 years, the same age as you and me, she was making speeches to the public alongside her lifelong companion and friend, Elizabeth Stanton. Together, they launched the National Women's Suffrage Movement, published the hit newspaper, The Revolution, and lectured, lobbied, and protested for equal rights. It took a lot of work, but gathering the support of many other like-minded ladies, they were able to persevere.
You know, even though I'm so young, I'm already reminiscing on what the future has for us women. Only if I could just live another century to see the fruition of all the works of women. There's so much yet to be done. I'm far from retreat, and I hope you are too, my friend.
Retreat? Say, Susie, you know that's not even in my vocabulary. The future for us gals is only bright in my eyes. I would have girls regard themselves not as adjectives, but as nouns. Let women be free from the bounds of male companionship.
Exactly.
Let's continue to work together.
Together.
Anthony's tireless efforts had a profound impact on American society. She traveled extensively throughout the United States, giving speeches and organizing campaigns for women's suffrage. Her work helped to raise awareness of the importance of women's voting rights and paved the way for future generations of women's rights activists.
Here, in the very first paragraph of the Declaration, is the assertion of the natural right for all to ballot. For how can the consent to be governed be given if the right to vote is denied? For does living in a country mean to someone that has no power? This is what I am fighting for, to change the world, to change, and for recognition of women. Thank you.
Susan B. Anthony performed over 90 speeches a year, more than anyone else for her time. Susan B. Anthony is unfortunately more well known nowadays rather than Elizabeth Stanton because she had more freedom than Stanton did and was able to travel around the country giving speeches. Stanton often had to stay home to take care of her kids, whereas Anthony never married or had children and had much more free time to travel.
I wish nothing more than to be freed of children, to have a life of empowerment and grow old. We shall not be in our prime before 50. And after, we should be good for 20 years, at least.
Oh, Elizabeth, don't fret, darling, don't fret. It is not your fault that you were taught the ways of a woman. For there's not a woman born who desires to eat the bread of dependence. But when it happens, you just have to accept it with open arms. Just don't let those rules define who you are. You are forever more than just a mother, and all your efforts are counted, trust me.
In the midst of her career, she started advocating for the rights of slaves. Anthony also helped fugitive slaves escape and held an anti-slavery rally. She and Stanton gathered signatures to pass the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, formally abolishing slavery.
All should be upheld because it is the backbone of every nation to factor the marginalized. The principle of self-governing cannot be violated by impunity. The individual's right is sacred, regardless of class, sex, or race, or gender, or any case, or any accident, or any incident at birth. We have a right to vote. That is simple.
Her career in advocacy skyrocketed, eventually causing her to create the National Women's Suffrage Association, or NWSA, alongside Stanton in 1869. They established headquarters in New York and started a newspaper called The Revolution, which published articles on women's rights to suffrage, education, and divorce. The NWSA was more radical and controversial than the competing American Women's Suffrage Association, which focused only on the vote. The NWSA wanted a constitutional amendment to secure the vote for women, but it also supported a variety of reforms that aimed to make women equal members of society.
You know, the day may be approaching that the whole world will recognize women as equal as men. Women, we might as well be dogs baying at the moon as petitioners without the right to vote. Can you believe it, Lizzie?
Come, my conservative friend. Wipe the dew off your spectacles and see that the world is moving quite quickly at that.
I agree.
Her career in advocacy didn't come without its obstacles. After casting her ballot in the 1872 presidential election in her hometown of Rochester, New York, she and 14 other women were arrested, indicted, tried, and convicted for voting illegally.
I shall never pay $1 for unjust penalty. I am a citizen of this country, therefore I have a right to vote. If you have to arrest me to prove this, then by all means, do it.
Anthony was found guilty and fined for $100. She later petitioned Congress to review the trial and excuse her fine, believing that she had been denied her right to trial by the jury because of the judge's instructions. In 1890, the National Women's Suffrage Association merged into the National American Women's Suffrage Association. This caused many women inside and outside the country to be aware of their lack of rights, and the suffrage movement surged.
Women of all classes are awakening to the necessity of self-support, but few are willing to do the ordinary, useful work which they are fitted.
The day is approaching that the whole world will recognize that women are just as equal as men.
Yeah, you go, girl.
In 1906, Susan and Elizabeth published their first autobiography, The History of Women's Suffrage, which spans 6 volumes, which were over 6,000 pages long and took 40 years to write. Later in the same year, Susan B. Anthony passed away at the age of 86. Despite Anthony's tireless advocacy for a women's suffrage amendment, she would not live to see it upheld in the United States Constitution. It would take almost 30 more years of civil rights advocacy and confrontation before women would secure an amendment to the Constitution that prohibited states from denying the vote on the basis of sex. 14 years after Anthony's death, passage of the 19th Amendment, widely known as the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, guaranteed the right to vote shall not be denied on account for sex.
When I passed before I saw women get the rights that they truly do deserve, I will continue to oversee all that this world does for women and their liberation. This oligarchy of sex makes their fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons the oligarchs over the mothers and the sisters, the wife and the daughters of every household, which carries discord and rebellion into every home of the nation.
Susan B. Anthony is the perfect example of what a great citizen should be. Her courage, determination, and discontent in current systems showed the world how change is made. If all the systems that held Anthony down were never fought against, the history of women would forever be the same. Today, the National Women's Suffrage Movement reformed into the League of Women Voters in 1920. It works to educate women in their rights, protect laws around bodily freedoms, and speak out on current national issues. Without Susan, Elizabeth, and all the people who helped her, women around the world would continue to be oppressed. Her determination to change and discontent in current systems should always be an example of what it means to be a great citizen.